Newspaper articles bleed stories of wounded women, and we men have become the valley of the shadow of death, constantly taking away their breath. It is dark, and the sun's rays cannot raise our sons, nor erase our sins. The headlines of this article is of an uncle who speaks with his knuckles, and the other page is of a couple where the man's fist feasts on his fiancée until her flesh is left gaping. Her body is now stitched together in stories that she's been through. Her cracked lips still forge a smile. She's trying to hide all of her pain, yet the walls of this house holds a lot of secrets. And the neighbors now speak in whispers and claim that it is none of their business, so they remain silent. The public remains silent. We remain silent. Even the victim remains silent, yet her eyes scream for rescue. She says, "Help me." On the Sunday Times, as a pastor, he alters his character. The altar still stinks of his sins. His intentions are sinister. It is sacrilege to use sermons to seduce. Who knew that predators can also prey when they wear fancy suits to suit their fancy in pursuit of all these women? Daily newspapers bleed red. Red is the color our sisters swallow. And to murmur is a language taught to daughters when fathers murder mothers, maybe martyrs. Are all these women we read about on the newspapers, and the newspapers keep bleeding. Sithi sicimeza sibakhulekela kanti khona bacabanga icebo lokubaciba kuhloko ocetshwayo ngemcibisholo bengenacala kuyacaca futhi kuyacika. The newspapers bleed.
Wow, that was an amazing performance there by poet Lethu Nkwanyana, wasn't it? Now, as we step into the vibrant city of Durban, we find ourselves at the heartbeat of literary excellence. October marks the return of the highly anticipated Poetry Africa Festival, a celebration of spoken words and the power of poetry to inspire social change. For over 2 decades, this annual international festival has brought together some of the world's most compelling voices. Presented by the Center for Creative Arts at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, Poetry Africa is more than just a festival, it is a movement. Joining me this morning are two visionaries who embody the spirit of Poetry Africa, Siphindile Hlongwa, the curator of the festival, and acclaimed poet Lethu Nkwanyana. Guys, a very good morning to you. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Simpiwe. Are you good?
Very much so. Good to have you.
Thank you.
Wow, Lethu, that was a gripping poet, eh?
Thank you so much.
Amazing. Great stuff. And I suppose those who might have missed the Joburg installment missed out on poets such as these. Let's talk about the Poetry Festival. When it was conceptualized over 2 decades ago, what was the end goal? What is the mission? And just looking back, have you achieved that mission?
I think I joined the center, well, it's like 14 years of the festival, and it's now 28 years of the festival, and I've witnessed over the years the growth of the festival, the legs that it actually gave or borrowed to the poets of South Africa to actually engage. So it is a platform that was created for engagement of poets, sharing of their work, and also networking, also facilitating exchanges between South African poets and international poets. So we've been seeing that growing on a yearly basis.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of curating some of the poets who will be forming part of the lineup of every festival, what is it that you look out for? Do you look for the depth in terms of the content of their poets, or do you look for a poet which is good in playing around with words?
We need to be very specific on that one. You can be playing around with words, but is it impactful, the work that you deliver on stage? Because that's the most important thing. And also it goes according to the theme. And the theme this year is Dennis Brutus. And Dennis Brutus's poem, which is Somehow We Survive. So I think we had needed to reflect as a country after 30 years of democracy, where we are as a country, and also what is the contribution of a poet in this 30 years of democracy, and how do we plan for the years coming forward, the next 30 years, or 30 years more of democracy. So we look at those things, and we also look at, because it is an international festival, so we are looking within the province of KZN, the national footprint and also the African footprint and the international footprint. So you'll see it on our lineup that we've got quite a lot of internationals that are coming through to Durban as of Orange Day. We already have a few who actually participated in Johannesburg that we are moving to Durban with, just to wrap up the festival.
So the Durban leg will be the bigger one?
It will be the bigger one.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. Let me also bring you in. You just heard, she said that, you know, one of the requirements or the criteria for the selection of some of the poets forming part of the lineup is whether they make an impact on stage. So when you create or write your poems, what is it? What kind of impact do you want to see on your audience?
For these poetry, we labor long and hard so that we can be able to write these poems. So I reflect quite a lot on existential questions, philosophy, but most of my poetry content is about God. So I speak a lot about God and social ills. So that's the subject matter that I usually tackle.
And then being part of a festival such as the Poetry Africa Festival, what kind of impact does it have on your own, you know, artistic creativity?
Yeah. Poetry Africa, I've been watching Poetry Africa videos from the time I was a kid. Really? I've always wanted to be in the Poetry Africa stage. And being able to represent South Africa or be part of Poetry Africa is truly impactful in my life. So the main message that I always want to share or get across to the audience is that you should always believe in your dreams, because I was able to write on my notepad and be able to achieve the dream of being part of Poetry Africa.
Yeah. Now, Siphindile, let's talk about, you know, the kind of community or how Poetry Africa Festival fosters a sense of community and cohesion among the poets.
It greatly does. It's where they all converge, they all come in and they share ideas. And also we've been able to facilitate a lot of partnerships internationally, and we are able to send through our poets to different countries like Belgium, Nigeria. We are currently sending Lethu to represent South Africa in Togo this year for the World Poetry Slam Championship, which is happening in November. So it's gives a lot of legs for South African poets to actually move around, and it creates a sense of community, that community is not just within your like where you are staying, but also internationally you can identify yourself with a certain community, and you are able to create or recreate work or co-curate work with other poets from other spaces as well. And also it encourages a lot of collaboration with musicians. You can find yourself collaborating with filmmakers. We are also screening a lot of films. We're screening 3 films from Sipho Jonas, Bali Malimela, and well as Claudio Posani from Italy that we are going to be screening at the festival. So we are seeing poet putting the poetry translating it in various forms, and working with very different artists as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would imagine it also contributes to the literary landscape in South Africa, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Greatly, it does. And I think that was the plan this year, was we are seeing the growth of South African poets. How can we support them as a festival? That is why, like on the Saturday of the 12th of October, we kind of looked at the business side of poetry so that poets can actually treat their work that they're doing as business. So we are facilitating all those workshops, like the arts administration. How do you write a proposal and how do you report for the grant that you have received? But also, how do you get yourself into a publishing space? So we're having those conversation, intellectual property, monetizing on digital spaces. We are also looking at branding and marketing and packaging. How do you brand and market your work that you're doing as a poet? So there's a lot of business-orientated conversation that will take place in Durban.
Right. Now, Lethu, how do you brand yourself? Would you classify yourself as someone who just writes poets based on whatever is around you, or is it just your personal experiences?
It's not just personal experiences. There's something that I like to say, that you gotta be the brand to build a brand. So that's how I represent myself. Wherever I go, I can be walking and thinking of a poem, because I'm thinking of poetry all the time. So I run a lot of poetry workshops because I want to impart what I have to other people. So I go to different schools. That's what I usually do now, and universities, trying to share my experiences and most importantly also share God with the
Yes.
people that I'm with.
All right, and I guess the key takeaway there is you have to be a brand to build a brand.
Yes.
Lovely chatting to you too. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
you
for
so
having
much.
us.
Great stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, many thanks to Siphindile and Lethu for sharing their insights and passion for poetry with us this morning. It's clear that Poetry Africa is more than just a festival. It is a movement for social change, and the wait is almost over because the 28th edition of the Poetry Africa kicks off from October the 3rd to the 12th in Johannesburg. It's just, in Durban and, of course, online. Do not miss this incredible celebration of words coming alive on stage through captivating poetry.